Hey Dennis, I'm really excited to be doing this interview and talking about Duncan. You
Thank you.
showed me who Duncan was earlier, and or the image of Duncan, and I'm
Sure
really
you did.
excited to find out more about you and your book.
Good.
Before we begin getting into the questions, can you tell us a little something about you and your book?
Sure. The book arose out of my experience in retirement. I was in retirement from Syracuse University, where I taught German language and literature for 40 years. I retired in the year 2007, and I was casting about for something to do in retirement. And I thought that I thought about the fact that I had spent 40 years analyzing German novels, novellas, and short stories for undergraduate students and graduate students over all those decades. And I said, well, I've analyzed everything up and down, all the great novels in the German canon. How about seeing if I can write one myself? I ought to be able to write one myself. Anyway, once that idea hit me, the challenge was irresistible. So I sat down and wrote a first novel, which is called The Man Who Loved Donuts. It's a comic novel, uh, and it went pretty well. And I realized that I could do it. I could actually discipline myself to write a page a day and not worry about when it gets finished. That was key, not needing it to be finished right away. So after I finished The Man Who Loved Donuts, I needed another idea. And my wife, Dorothy, said to me, why don't you write about an idea I've been thinking about for a long time? And I said, sure, I need a plot. What is it? And she said, well, it's about our son Danny's toy gorilla, Duncan, and how he's stolen and is lost to his owner, Nate. And when he gets him back, he is endangered because of the fellow who's coming up the coast to confront him and kidnap him. So I said, it sounds like a pretty good idea. Let me give it a go. And that started me on Duncan.
Wow. That's exciting stuff right there. And I'm glad, it became like a family event for the next plot of your book.
Yes.
So does that mean you wrote two books?
Well, I've written four, actually.
Okay.
Four novels. Duncan, The Man Who Loved Donuts, a more recent one called The Golden Pot, a fairy tale for our time. And then even more recently, I finished a crime novel, which I just finished a couple of weeks ago. So I've got four under my belt in retirement.
Well, congratulations on all four of your books. Which one is your favorite?
Thank you. Well, I'd have to say it's Duncan right now. Yeah. Because of the attention it's getting, and because I'm a great fan of horror fiction and horror movies. And I've been addicted to them, horror movies, my whole life. And I just I love the challenge of writing a good, effective horror story. And I think this one turned out to be that.
That's nice. I'm excited to read it because I also like horror movies. So, what
Yes.
part of the book was the most fun to write?
I would say it was the chapter in which Mark, the father, who's a college professor like myself, and there's a lot of me and him, goes into class one day to teach his students the poem by Byron. And when he does, he finds that he's very upset over something in the poem and he doesn't know why. And then when he plays the music by Tchaikovsky for the students as a musical accompaniment, he gets even more upset. And I like the challenge of alternating between descriptions of the music and descriptions of Mark's emotions. So I found that was a nice zigzag way to do the chapter, and it pleased me very much when I finished it.
Well, I got to watch out for that part of the book.
Yeah.
Uh, so, Dennis, I know you mentioned earlier that the book was an idea your wife gave you.
Yes.
Is that also what inspired you to write the book?
I would say so because I'm not a big one on plots. Plots don't come to me easily. So when she suggested the plot of, excuse me, Nate being kidnapped by this horrific psychopath, Santa Claus, I jumped at it. I thought it was brilliant, a brilliant idea, but it was just a seed. I had to work it out. And my wife is pleased with the job I've done on it. So she's my biggest fan.
Aren't they all right?
Yeah.
What characters in your book are most similar to you or the people you know?
Well, I'd say there's some of me in all of them, but most prominently, the father, Mark, who's a college professor like me. There's a lot of me in him. His love of literature and music, his concern over his son's welfare. And also, there's a lot of me, I would say, in Nate, his son, the boy, who's a very prominent character in the book, who's 9 years old, and who's a great little basketball player. And his athletic ability stands him in good stead when the final confrontation comes at the end.
Okay. And I know you shared with me earlier how the title came about, but for your viewers, can you share with us how you came up with the title of the book?
Well, it's an interesting question, very interesting. Duncan is, in a sense, real, as I showed you before. He was my son's toy, my son Danny, no relation to Nate. And one day when Danny was about 5 or 6, he was at the airport with my wife to pick up a relative, and Danny went into the airport gift shop and he nosed around. He was a little 5-year-old, being where he shouldn't be, and he picked out a toy gorilla. And when my wife turned around and saw what he was doing, handling it and bringing it out of the store without paying for it, she said, "What are you doing, Danny? What are you doing?" And he said, "I want this gorilla. His name is Duncan." And he misread the name. It was really Dakin, which is the toy manufacturer label. So Danny misread it as Duncan, and I took it from there.
Nice. That's a very interesting story.
Yeah.
Gives a good ring to the book. Dennis, would you and your main character get along?
No, we wouldn't. If I actually ran into Santa Claus on the street, I'd call the cops on him immediately if I knew what he was up to. But as a character, I get along beautifully with him. He's just a fictional character, although one I did invest a lot of study in. He's not just tossed off. I'd studied a lot of abnormal psychology in graduate school and college, so there's a lot of thought that goes into him. So I do have a symbiotic relationship with him as a literary character, but as a person in real life, no. I would find him abhorrent.
Well, thank you for sharing that and clarifying that. You know, people are always drawn to how you would relate to the characters in your book. And I think that was a good way of explaining it.
I hope so.
It was. And so let's talk about your process on how you completed your book and the creation of the book. What is your writing process like? Are you more of a plotter or a pantser?
I love that distinction. I'd never heard it before. Plotter versus pantser. So obviously one who sets up everything outlined before starting to write versus one who just goes by the seat of the pants, right? I'm a little bit of both, and I think every writer is. You may lean toward one or the other. I would lean toward pantser. But I want a little bit of plot in front of me so I have a general idea of where the book is going. And within those limitations, then I'm free to pants it when I want to, in between the points of reference on the outline.
Okay.
So a little bit of both.
Well, I mean, there's no harm in being a little bit of both, right? Everyone needs a little bit of something.
Absolutely.
And what do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
Well, I need quiet. I'm not one who can work with the radio or TV on or even music in the background. I like absolute quiet if I can get it, and a pint of Jack Daniels. No, never. I can do without the Jack, but I need the quiet.
Well, I mean, people wouldn't know, right? And
That's true.
if you were to write a spin-off about a side character, which would you pick?
That's a good question too. I'm not sure. I think maybe Mark, because I like writing about campus life, and Mark is a professor at a major university, Syracuse University, where I actually worked. And I would be able to do a good character study of Mark as a professor. My other novel, comic novel, The Man Who Loved Donuts, is also about a professor, a younger man who doesn't get tenure at his university and is dismissed, and then goes down to New York City, to Manhattan, and gets drunk for a weekend and has all sorts of interesting misadventures.
Well, that sounds like exciting stuff. And it would be I think that would be a good spin-off too, because it tells you more of what a life in a professor would be, something that you could consider, because that's how you came about this book and what ideas came to you before you became who you are right now.
Yes. And I like to do comedy about campus life. And there are a number of great comic campus novels that are my models, and which I admire. Like Kingsley Amis is one. The British novelist Kingsley Amis's novel Lucky Jim is a masterpiece of academic humor. Another one is Philip Roth, The Human Stain, which takes up the issue of race in academic life, black versus white and so forth, which is anything but a comic novel. It's very serious. But that and other campus novels have been models for me.
All right. Thank you. And how do you celebrate when you finish your book?
There's that Jack Daniels again. No, not really. I take my wife out for a dinner at a good restaurant.
Oh, that's nice.
And we have a few drinks.
Well, there you go. There's the Jack Daniels, right?
Yeah, always coming back.
Yep. And what is your kryptonite as a writer?
Good question. I like that. I would say self-doubt. Once in a while, I have a crisis of doubting my ability to write stylistically elegant prose. I can get obsessive about it, and it can block my process a little bit. So I just have to step back, take a few deep breaths, and go at it again. So I tend to overwrite once in a while, and then I try to make up for that by being as super clear as I possibly can, so that even the long sentences I write are clear to anyone who reads them.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure a lot of writers go through that, and it's important for people to know that it's just an experience or a moment that you can get back from.
That's right. That's how I treat it, and that's how it is.
That's good. And has writing and publishing a book changed how you see yourself?
Yes, in one important way. It showed me that I'm capable of finishing a book. Before I wrote my first book many years ago, the project of writing an entire book seemed so daunting to me that I doubted I'd ever do it. And then when I finished my first book, it was unlocking the floodgates. I knew from then on, if I wanted to write a book about anything, I could. That knowledge, that simple knowledge of ability, helped me enormously in producing 8 books, as I have 3 scholarly books and a memoir and 4 novels.
Okay.
Yep.
And do you see writing as spiritual or therapeutic practice?
Also a fine question. Certainly therapeutic practice. Interestingly, when you write and discipline yourself to it, you see a lot of your character faults and weaknesses coming into the process, and you have to manage them all one way or another and not let them infect the creative flow too much. They're always there trying to get their way in, but you have to learn to keep them out. Yeah, that's all I'll say on that, I guess.
Okay, well, that's good inputs. Would anyone in your family disapprove of anything you've written?
No, I don't think so. Even Duncan, which is perhaps the most controversial book I've written, is readable to anyone with an open mind. Now, it's true, there are some readers who do not like the book because it deals with pedophilia and child murder. But I do not dwell on the bizarre and horrific aspects of the violence. There's no way not to include them, but I try to deal with them as tastefully as possible and not go to extremes or excess in depicting violence. Still, there's some there. There's no question about it.
And I think, that's normal because there's always there are always going to be critics, right? And people that
Yes.
disapprove about everything, even the littlest thing. So,
Yes.
and
There is a class of reader response, a group of people who seem to react negatively to Duncan. 7 or 8 of them anyway. They tend to be housewives who just can't get past the idea of child murder in a novel or in a movie. And that's all right, I understand that. They don't have to read the book, that's fine. But for others who have curiosity about the kind of person Santa is and how he got that way, this book is a magnet because I put a lot of study into him.
thank you for sharing that, Dennis.
Yeah.
Now, if you had to describe yourself in just 3 words, what would those be?
3 words, huh? Let's see. Intelligent, curious, perfectionistic.
Nice. At least 2 of those 3 words are me as well.
Which one isn't?
Intelligent.
Okay, right.
And what is the most valuable advice you've been given about writing?
That's a very simple answer, and I always answer this question by saying the most important advice you can be given about writing is to write. To write, if you want to be a writer, you've got to write. You've got to sit down and write every day, if possible, even if only for a few minutes. Write out your thoughts, write out your reaction to an experience, try a short story, try a poem, whatever you lean towards, and just write and write and write. And the process refines itself over time.
I like
And
that.
yes,
That's very good advice. Now, what advice would you give to help others create plot lines?
well, there you got me because I'm very weak on plot lines myself. They come very slowly and grudgingly to me for some reason. I'm much more a character-driven writer. I think about a certain character like Santa without necessarily thinking about a plot for his behavior. But I find the more I think about him, the more a plot does suggest itself. And if you have him doing one thing, it leads to him doing another and another. And that's motivated by the character of Santa himself rather than by any external behavior.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
character motivates plot.
I like that. Character motivates plot.
Yeah.
People can get a lot from that, especially those that want to start writing. That's a good starting point. Now,
I think so.
can you tell us where we can purchase your book? And if you have a website, please mention your website.
My book can be purchased at the usual bookseller sites like Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And I don't have a blog as such, but I do have an author page on Goodreads, the book readers, book lovers website, Goodreads. Just type my name in and you'll get my author page.
Okay, great. I should check that out.
Goodreads.com. Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis. Now, lastly, can you share your experience with Bookmarc Alliance?
Yes, it's been a very positive experience so far, including this interview. It's a very interesting and cheerful, kind group of people to work with so far. Adrian Villaren has been great to me. He's taken me under his wing, so to speak, and has done fine things for me. For example, he sent me this press release yesterday, which is going to be given out at the London Book Fair, I assume. And I'm fine. I love Bookmarc Alliance. My experience with them has been exhilarating.
Well, thank you, Dennis, for sharing that. And it was a pleasure talking to you today about your book and your writing process. I look forward to seeing this in the London Book Fair.
So do I. Thank you very much, Dar.
You're welcome.